Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing a support tier list for 1017. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Come by, check out the stream. Starts around midnight Eastern Standard Time. Every night goes till about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to have you. Very chill, very friendly community. And check out the rest of the offerings on the channel as well. We do fresh tier lists, patch notes for every patch. And then we also have in-depth champion guides, topical guides, like does luck exist in League? What is toxicity in League? How can you overcome it? What is dodging? Should you be dodging? Best one tricks. Just dozens and dozens of other guys to check that out. And then we cover other games as well. I do mostly Total War Warhammer 2, but I have been covering some more single-player games as well. Doing a Witcher 3 playthrough right now, and then we're going to be doing a Deadwood playthrough pretty soon. Okay. So let's go ahead and get in here. And I do apologize if the audio sounds a little weird. We're in the process of moving right now, and so the only thing really left in this room is the computer setup over here while they're working on the internet at the new house. I'm just going to be coming back to this house to do the League stuff until that gets fixed. But anyways, let's go ahead and get in here. So 1017 is a really small patch overall, so I'm not going to do a separate patch video for it. This is literally it right here. So I'm just going to talk about it very briefly and how that might affect the support meta, and then we'll get right into the support picks. You can always find this Google Doc over here in the description as well, and then within each one of these Google Docs, if you click on it, you'll find another smaller one that gives a 1 to 5 rating system for each champion, recommended runes, recommended items, and then if I do have a guide for it, I'll link the guide. Some of the guides are a little bit older, but I am working on updating those for new seasons as well. But unless the champion's undergone a dramatic transformation, the guides are usually still pretty useful, even if they're a bit older. Okay. So on this patch, Caitlyn is losing 5 movement speed. I don't think that's going to matter too much. That might knock a % or 2 off of her, but I still think she's going to be a very highly picked champ, very highly contested champ on this patch. She just fits really well into the kind of the push and poke lane dominance meta, which we'll see with the supports. And that's how it's going with the ADC. So I still expect it to be primarily Caitlyn, Ashe, and Jen being sort of the big 3 ADCs. Maybe Ashe steps up a little bit more with this Caitlyn nerf, but all of them will be pretty good on this patch, so I don't think that's going to matter too much. Sona's Q, the ratio is going from a 0.1 to a 0.4. Pretty significant, especially if you go for a very heavy AP build. So definitely if you're going for like an Archangel's Lichbane build, which I don't like that build, then that's going to be a big nerf to that. If you're going for a Theme's Ardent Censer, it's going to be a pretty big nerf. If you do choose to get something like a Redemption or a Shirelia's in there instead, then it's not going to matter as much. But yeah, your damage output is definitely going to be hit a little bit. So they're primarily trying to hit pro, like the pro play Sona Lux combination, which I haven't seen too much, but there's a little bit of that floating around out there. So they're really trying to hit kind of the carry Sona, who's going to have a lot of gold and get a bunch of AP. And the E movement speed ratio is from 3% to 2%. That doesn't matter. Okay, so I think Sona is still going to be really strong. That's not going to affect her early game too much. And a lot of the time, if you support Sona, you'll get 3 points in Q and then max your W for team fights anyways. So this is mostly going to be a nerf to the laning phase, although it can be significant. Once you have your Ardent Censer plus Athenes and just some other miscellaneous items, your Frostfang, your runes, and stuff like that, you'll probably get between 150 and 200 AP. And if you have 200 AP, this is going to knock 20 AP or 20 damage off of your Q, which can be significant. So, but I still think she'll be pretty good right now in this meta. And we'll talk about Sona more specifically. I've got her as number 2 on my list, so we'll talk about her, but I don't think that's going to matter too much. Lux, now this is a pretty big nerf to Lux. Her W shield is going from 50 to 150 to 45 to 125, so that's a lot off of that shield, because you got to remember the shield can hit people twice. So instead of having a 300 shield, if you hit somebody twice, now they're only going to have a 250 shield, so that's a 50 nerf. It's like, yes, you are getting a little bit more of an AP ratio, but it's not going to be enough to make up for it. So that's going to be a really huge hit. And then the mana cost is quite significant as well, going from 60 mana all the way up to 80, because most of the time you max your W. So that's going to be a lot more mana cost. So you're going to get hit a lot harder if you want to rush something like an Ardent Censer on her. Athenes, you'll probably be all right. I mean, They did buff Frostfang a few patches ago, so that does give more mana regen, so maybe that's enough to compensate, but this might force you to take a mana rune, like Mana Flow Band or Presence of Mind or something like that with her. So I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that that's probably not good for business for Lux. And then the extra shield, so there was a bug or something where I guess you got an extra shield with a W. I don't know how often that was getting abused by most people, but that would be a nerf too. So I think she'll fall a couple percentage points. I still think she'll be pretty good. I have her in tier 2, but that's going to be a pretty significant nerf to W Max Lux. Evelyn, that's a pretty big nerf to her. She's not super meta right now. She does have a decent win rate, but it's a nerf to her. Hecarim has been very popular. It's a nerf to him. So the Evelyn nerf is going to make your squishy enchanters a little bit better because now they won't get assassinated as much. Same thing with Hecarim. He can really die very easily on the back line, so if he's nerfed, enchanters are going to be a little bit better off. Enchanters really want to go up against tanks. Like, they want tanks on their team, and they want to go against tanks. They want longer fights where they can very safely position in the back and just continually buff up their team. Keana's getting a nerf. Okay, don't see her that much. It's kind of weird, but sure. And then Yone's getting a nerf. He's pretty bad from what I saw, so I'm not really sure why they're nerfing him unless they know some stats I don't know. Yeah, I mean, he's got a 49% win rate. That's not too bad for a fresh release champion after 2 weeks, but either way, it is what it is. I don't think that's going to affect the support meta too much, just because I don't think people were picking supports around whether Yone was in the game or not. Okay, Aatrox bonus. Our bonus AD is going up a little bit. Okay, he's really good in pro a lot of times, not as good in solo queue, so I don't think it's going to affect support meta. Varus getting a little bit more attack speed. Could bring back attack speed Varus with Blither King, Hurricane, and Gensu's. I think that Ashe is just a better version of that right now. And Ashe does poke a little bit better, more consistently in the landing phase with her W. If Varus hits a lot of his charged up arrows, he can be pretty strong, but he was nerfed quite a bit a few patches ago, and I'm not really I don't remember the exact details of that, but probably won't matter. Maybe he comes back a little bit. Xayah AD getting an extra 0.6 per level, not going to matter. Level 10, you have 6 more AD. That's cool and everything, but the big problem with Xayah is that her level 1 R, which is really her only safety mechanism, is 160 seconds, which is very bad. So anyways, I don't think it's going to matter too much for her. Kaiser 80 per level going up, still not going to matter. The attack speed might matter. The extra 20% attack speed at Emax. I think that you max E second, so that's around level 13 or so. You'd get 20% extra. I don't think that's going to matter. The problem is that she's a tier of the goddess user, and the tier users are in a pretty terrible spot right now in the bot lane. They just come online way too slowly. You really want champions that can be very oppressive, push the lane, and do a lot off of their single item power spike. So the fact that she's still going to have to go mana immune into Gensu's is it just takes way too long to come online in this meta. So it's like you could win with her, but it's not going to be that great. The hyperscalers in general are still going to have a really hard time on this patch. And then Gragas' armor is going up by 3. I don't think that's going to matter. Maybe it matters for top lane or jungle. I don't think we'll see a lot more support Gragas. It's possible, but I really don't like melee champs. Most melee champs in support right now. Okay. So the meta overview, just kind of what's going on. The trends are still going to keep happening. The Ardent 2.0, anything that's a ranged attacker that can help your ADC scale a little bit more and sort of hit that power spike faster. So you can rush an Ardent Sensor or you can rush an Athene's. You have some kind of buff to attack speed or AD or just some way to help your ADC out. I think that's going to be really strong right now. You're still seeing a lot of tanky junglers up near the top. The Nunu, the Volibear, the Kayn. That trend's probably going to continue. Tons and tons of healing, so that favors enchanters as well. There's lots of Conquer, Triumph, Ravenous Hunter, Death Stance, Blither King, Spirit Visage. That means that fights are going to go longer. That favors enchanters. Jungle pathing, almost every jungler is going to start bot side and work their way to top. You get a better leash, and you're on time for Scuttle at 315. So that means that you're not going to be camped. It's a lot less likely you're going to be camped in the bot lane in early levels. This favors enchanters, because they're going to have a lot less pressure on them from the jungler most of the time. Early ADCs are really strong right now, so the push and poke ADCs, so primarily Kate, Ashe, and Jhin. I think that Jinx, particularly lower elos, can still be really strong as well with this. And that means that you want a ranged support that can also provide some harassment and can also you know, provide a little bit of safety or a little bit of peel if possible, so that you can harass without having to worry about getting engaged on or getting ganked by the jungler as much as maybe you have in the past. So just push and poke's the name of the game. And then there have been numerous nerfs to engage support, so Leona and Nautilus, and then a lot of other engaged supports have just had a really hard time in this meta with direct nerfs, and then also just the way that it's shifting up to be a really fast push poke meta. Try to dragon stack, try to get those early Rift Heralds, get those early towers. So anyways, okay, so let's talk about the picks here. So I have Bard up at number 1 right now. And I have been a doubter of Bard for a while, but I just kind of tried him out on a whim maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and I'm really starting to understand a lot of his power more, stuff that I really wasn't considering as much when I was rating him, that after playing him I can understand the strength of it a bit more. So what is it about Bard? And a lot of people have had Bard really high on their tier list for a long time, so I guess I've been a little off on that. And I never really understood why he had such a win rate for a long time. He's actually trended down a little bit. For a while there, it was 53 or 54%. But there are a few things about him that I think make him particularly strong in this style of meta, especially right now. So I just want to hit on just a couple of those really quick. I mean, the big one is his ult and how it interacts with a lot of different champions that are really popular and strong right now in the meta. So it's a very strong ranged engaged tool, while at the same time he can be a ranged harassment champion in the laning phase, and that's pretty rare. There aren't that many ranged engaged champs that can also sort of provide the harassment. So a lot of range, or a lot of engage rather, comes from Leona, Nautilus, and then Thresh and Blitzcrank can do it from a distance as well, but usually you have to get in there pretty close to do some damage. But with this, you can engage from much longer away, and it's 2.5 seconds. That gives your team a whole lot of time to follow up and catch up and get a really good hit on him. And a lot of times, if you get this, it's not only a 2.5 seconds of CC, but often it sets you up to be able to get a stun off of your Q. And if you get that stun on the Q, that's an extra 2 seconds. That's almost 4.5 seconds of CC on somebody. And this is not reduced by Mercury Treads or Tenacity. It cannot be Quicksilver Sashed. It cannot be Mikhail's. So that's actually quite good against enchanters. You know, that the Janna or the Lulu, if you hit the ADC, they're not going to be able to Mikhail's this off of somebody. So that gives it a really big advantage. And then you have lots of other things as well. It just comes in handy in a lot of circumstances too. It's actually a pretty good disengage tool. So if you have like a Fish Fizz on somebody, on one of your allies, or a Zed ult, or Karthus is channeling his ult, or just anything where your ally is going to be in a sticky situation, you can Tempered Fate to get around a lot of that stuff. And a lot of the champions being played right now in the bottom lane as well, just to fit in with the engage, are immobile champs. So you're not seeing as many of the Ezreals and Lucians. They're still there. They're still fairly popular. But you're seeing a lot more of kind of the Caitlyn, Ashe, and Jhin. And they have a really hard time dodging Tempered Fate. So in metas past, it hasn't been as good because people could dodge it more easily. If people were playing Rakan, for example, or just maybe Xayah, just anything that, or Ezreal, Lucian, that type of stuff. Anything that can dodge the Tempered Fate would be good. And it's on a really low cooldown, so you can make this play a lot, this 110 seconds. And the fact that the meta right now is this kind of push and poke, because you're pushed in so often, if you have a Caitlyn or an Ashe or a Jhin on your team and you push up, that gives you more time to go around and get those chimes a lot safer. And also, if you want to go make a play on middle with your ult, or, to leverage your E to get a sneaky gank on your own lane. Just once you get out of the lane with Bard, it's so handy because you get the extra power up from the chimes, you can do the roams, you can get deeper wards, just a lot of stuff you can do with that priority in the lane. So I think that's another thing that makes him particularly strong right now. Also, against a lot of these other kind of push-poke lanes, if you're against one of those two, this Caretaker Shrine, it did get nerfed recently, but it's still pretty decent. I mean, early on, it gives a 55 heal. It does cost 70 mana for that, so that's not insane. But you can just have this charging up and just ready to go for some heal. So he does have a light heal in there. And he just does pretty good damage. Like, once you connect with these meeps, you don't even have to get a lot of special items. Just your auto attacks themselves will put out quite a bit of damage in team fights. So That is pretty strong, and the Dead Man's Plate is something that I really resisted in the past, recommending on Bard just because it just seemed kind of silly, and that was one of my major critiques of Bard, is that his AP ratios are so low, his E and his R don't have any AP ratios, he doesn't have a lot of synergy with a lot of the good items, but if you get that Dead Man's, it does make you a lot tankier. You do have to get in close to land those autos. It's only 500 range, so that can be kind of risky if they have a lot of AD. It does provide a little bit of extra on-hit damage, and it does give you the extra movement so that you can get around, get those chimes, roam, get deeper wards, and it's a lot safer if you have Dead Mans. You can like more confidently roam deep into their jungle because, you know, if the Kane shows up, you're probably going to be able to get away, right? You've got the armor to survive like his first couple of hits, and then you can use your Q to stun somebody and E to run away. You've got a lot of options, and if you don't auto-attack, then you get to keep that movement speed. Even if they slow you down, even if they're hitting you, you still get that movement speed. So it works really, really well with swiftness boots also. So it's just a pretty solid item. It is expensive, but the components are very nice in the laning phase, right? Getting the chain vest, getting the Giant's belt is very good. Does allow you to trade more confidently in the laning phase. You don't have to worry as much if you're going to get engaged on. And it does synergize really well with Guardian, because remember that Guardian as a rune does scale with your maximum HP as well, so, or bonus HP. So the more HP that you have, the more shield you're going to get off a Guardian. So in a way, it does give you a little bit of an extra shield, does make you tankier than people would suspect. And then taking something like Overgrowth or Conditioning can add extra tankiness to your kit. You can even get other things like Wit's End if you want. I've seen some bards in the past get things like Iceborne Gauntlet. So those are a little bit more rare. But you can get a more tanky version of Bard and still be really useful because your ult, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't do any damage anyway, so the scaling on the ult doesn't matter. If you hit somebody with that to start a team fight, they're dead 9 times out of 10 because everyone's just going to dogpile them. So the fact that it doesn't do any damage doesn't matter as much. So anyways, these are just a couple of realities, things about Bard that I didn't really appreciate, that he just operates so well, as I said before, in a meta where you're pushing to try to get priority so you can go do something with that priority. So he's one of the best roamers in the game, and he does put up a lot of pressure. You know, like I said before, if he gets a stun on you in lane, it can be a lot of damage. So, and he, you know, those meeps put out a surprising amount of damage early on for all in. So you can pressure things like Thresh, even if he engages on your ADC. If you get a pin on him or you get a pin on their ADC and just auto attack him a couple of times with the meeps, you can put out some pretty good damage. So anyways, I think you got to practice Bard a little bit to get used to him, especially like optimal ways to use that ult. But I think that he is quite strong because he has such a unique kit that just works so well with priority and roaming and can engage safely from a distance. And that's just so rare right now. And that's something that like Rakan kind of has a hard time with. And I still like Rakan. We'll talk about Rakan later, but if he engages, you know, with his ult, first of all, it's on a longer cooldown. It's on 130 seconds, whereas Bard's 110. That you can get CC'd. You know, it's hard to go into stuff like Veigar or even Leona and Nautilus can chain CC you, and that can be a problem. Versus Tempered Fate, you can get around a lot of sort of those issues. Or even trying to jump on something like a Caitlyn or a Jinx can be a problem if they CC you with the traps or the chompers or whatever. So anyways, I do think that Rakan can be good, but he just doesn't have the poke in lane, and his engage is a little bit riskier than Bard's is, but he can still be good. So I recommend Guardian, Demolish, Second Wind, Overgrowth, and then Ghost Poro and Relentless Hunter. Relentless Hunter is kind of a must-have that kind of fits the theme we were just talking about of roaming around a lot. Ghost Poro you can substitute out with Zombie Ward if you think you're going to be able to kill a lot of wards. The lower the elo, the less wards people put out. So if you're like Gold and lower, maybe even Platinum and lower, I recommend Ghost Poro just because you can get those deep wards, and when they Poro, they extend the duration of your vision effectively. And then, you know, Overgrowth, you can switch it up and get the anti-CC one. If they have a lot of CC with Second Wind, you can get Conditioning. I don't like Bone Plating too much, but if they do have a Leona or a Nautilus or something hardcore early game, you can get Bone Plating as well. And then Demolish, you could also get Font of Life if you want to do that, especially if you think you're going to get Ardent Sensor. That can be pretty handy. But overall, I think he's going to be really strong right now. Then I really like Deadman's most of the time on him. A lot of people will also rush Athene's. So both of those are good. Deadman's obviously going to give you the movement and a bit more survivability. Athene's is going to give you a bit more healing. The Athene's version did get nerfed because they nerfed his heal a little bit. The baseline heal they nerfed by 15 a patch or two ago, so you don't get as much value out of the healing on the Athenes, because the Athenes healing can only match what your baseline spell does. But it is a lot cheaper. You can come online faster. It does give you more AP. You know, your meats do scale with AP. You do have some AP scaling, but I still prefer Deadman's most of the time. But you can get an Athenes later too. You can do Deadman's and then Athenes if you want to. But yeah, I think the Bard's going to be really good right now. We'll move on. I don't want to take forever on this, but I just want to explain the kind of my reversal on Bard there, where I didn't really understand, didn't think he was that great over time. But after playing him a little bit, just seeing him a lot, played in pro play, playing against him several times, I'm starting to understand the strength there. Okay, Sona. Now, I think that Sona is still going to be really strong. We did talk about her a second ago. She is getting nerfed on this patch a little bit with her AP ratios, but I think she's going to be still pretty strong overall. The big thing with Sona is that it's guaranteed poke in the laning phase, as she just historically fits in so well with like Caitlyn and Ashe, because you can't miss with your Q. You just walk up, you Q. If they're within 825 radius, they take a hit no matter what. And they're going to take Airy, they're going to take Scorch if you're going for that build. You can also do Guardian. I'm not sure what's like super popular. I guess a lot of people are doing Guardian on her. So you can do Guardian, which is going to offer you personally a bit more protection, but it's going to give you a little bit less poke because you're not going to have Airy. They have a similar win rate. Guardian is a little bit higher. Looks like it's about 1% higher on the Guardian. But it just depends. If you think you're going to like hard win against your lane, if you're against like a Vayne, Tom Kench or something like that, then, I think you can go Airy a little bit more comfortably, or you can go for Guardian with Relic Shield or Frostfang or whatever if you want to early on. But it's that guaranteed poke early on. They can't avoid it. If you get auto attacks, great. It does even more damage. So she really punishes a lot of these short range or melee champions out there. And then she does scale really, really well later on into the game. She's probably the highest scaling enchanter right now, just because this W, she's up there with Soraka, because this W puts out a huge amount of healing and shielding in team fights and has really good AP scaling. They are nerfing the AP scaling on the Q, but they're not nerfing the W, so I think that she'll still be in good shape there. The E isn't going to matter that much. You're losing, if you have 200 AP, you're losing like 2% off of that, so it's not going to be too big of a deal. And then with all the 5v5s going on right now, you do have the ultimate that you can cast with Crescendo, which can give you quite a lot of CC in those team fights with some of those other team fight champs. So overall, pretty good. She can be vulnerable to hard engage all-in champs, but if she's against other ranged enchanters, which is most of what you're going to be against these days, then I think she is pretty good. And if you do take the Guardian, you could even take something like Relic Shield if you want to, or Conditioning, and it could actually be pretty hard to all in and kill you. And you could take Barrier too if they have something like a Leona on their team. So it is surprisingly difficult to kill you. But that's the main thing with Sona is you can't dodge, guaranteed damage, it's really good poke, and that's solid. Now, it can be a little rougher. She has a much harder time roaming, so you just want to kind of stay in lane and dominate early. So she can't roam like Bard can as comfortably, because if the jungler does catch her, she's probably going to die because she doesn't have very many reliable escapes. She just has her E, and she is super squishy. Whereas Bard's going to be building those tanky things. He has his E to get away, he has his Q for the stun to get away. So Bard can much more comfortably run around and make stuff happen. So that is, you are kind of pinned to your lane early on. Even later on, if they have assassins, if they have like a Fizz, Katarina, Kha'Zix, Zed, Talon, any of that stuff, it's very, very spooky to run off by yourself. But if you do dominate your lane hard, you can press that advantage, try to challenge dragons, rifts, towers. She's an excellent team fighter. So I like going for the Airy, Nimbus Cloak, Absolute Focus, Scorch, and then Conditioning or Revitalize. But you can go for the Guardian build if you want to do that. And then a lot of people, looks like, are going for the Magical Footwear plus Cosmic Insight. This doesn't have any mana regen, which is a little spooky on Sona, but if you rush Athenes and Frostfang did get that extra 25% mana regen a few patches ago, you might be able to make it. I really, really do not like the tier build. I know some people out there love the tier plus Lichbane into Archangels. I just think it's too slow. Tier's going to take a while to stack up. She can really use the mana very well. She's one of the better tier users. She's probably the best support that uses tier. that nevertheless, it's still going to take you 10 or 15 minutes to stack up. I'd just rather have immediate power. And the mana is really not that much of an issue, honestly. Once you get like your Athenes and a couple more Fairy Charms towards your next item, you're probably okay. Anyways, I think she's really strong. And then Boots of Swiftness, Frostfang, Athenes. I think you have to start with Athenes, especially if you're not going a mana item, because it has the 100% mana regen versus Ardent's only going to have 50%. Also, Ardent does a lot better once your ADC gets a couple of items. And Ardent itself also scales based on your level. So I like getting Ardent second and then Redemption next. But as you can see, like her win rate, once you make it at 2 or 3 items, you know, at 25 minutes is like 57%. So it's really, really high scaling. So yeah, I think Sona's great. Just be careful on the roams. Watch out for assassins. If you are scared of assassins, remember you can take Barrier, and that's still a very good summoner on her. Okay, Soraka's the next one that I'll recommend. And Soraka was number 1 for a while there, and I think that she still is really good. The problem is she doesn't have any sort of engage, and I do think the engage tanks are still really good in other lanes, but you're not seeing them as much as you would expect. You do see the Hecarim, but we are seeing you know, a little bit more, like you're still seeing like the Graves, the Kha'Zix, Echo, Kayn. Like those champs have a hard time engaging fights. Evelyn, because Volibear got nerfed down, people for some reason aren't playing Nunu as much as they should. Zac is still kind of on the fringe, although I think he's really good. So having some kind of engage from the support role is nice. Sona doesn't engage well either, but you do have the option of an R or a flash R or something like that. Like you have some kind of CC. Soraka really doesn't have CC. Her silence is okay, you know, in the right situation. But the main thing about Soraka is that she's the best single target healer, so she really pairs super well with tanks because you can just spam that W so much. It's on a 2-second cooldown, puts out a huge amount of burst healing. You do have pretty good wave clear with your Q. They can dodge it if you're trying to harass the enemy. They can dodge those Qs, so it's not going to be as guaranteed as Sona. But if you just Q that backline, you can put them into the tower more comfortably. And then a huge one also is your ult. It's global presence. You can influence all of the lanes. It works really well with Ultimate Hunter. So you can really... She has such a roam advantage compared to most other enchanters because that R is just instant roam anywhere on the map, anytime it's available. As long as you are interpreting the fights correctly and choosing when to use your R, you're not wasting it on people that are already dead. You're not using it when you don't have to. That can make her very strong. So I think that she is going to be one of the better enchanters versus other enchanters in your lane just because you have that roam potential and they can't roam. So if you're against something like a Lulu or a Sona, you are going to be able to roam way before they can ever do that. And she has pretty reasonable like self-healing and like very efficient ally healing in the laning phase. Like Sona's heal, she has a heal, but it's very expensive. You know, the W's 80 early on. It only heals for like 25 or 30 at level 1. So if you ever get poked out by something like a Lux or a Vel'Koz or Xerath or something like that, it's going to be a really hard time to, heal back up. Same thing with Bard. Like his heal's not fantastic. It's okay, but it only heals you for like 60 in early levels. Versus Soraka, if you hit that Q, it's going to be healing for a ton. I don't remember the exact number on it, but it's a very large heal for its cost. I think it ends up costing like 45, and if you hit the Q, it ends up healing for like 100 something. So, and it heals you too whenever you hit your Q. So she has much, much better sustain. So pretty much if you have much higher scaling and you're against an enchanter and they're not going to be able to engage on you, then she's great. She also can rush a Mikhail super comfortably because she has so many heals in her kit. Her W is on such a low cooldown and her ult is such a massive heal that Mikhail's is extremely good, and the extra health regen is also very good because you hurt yourself when you heal unless you've hit your Q. So she's probably the best Mikhail's user in the game, and Mikhail's is excellent against a lot of things in the meta right now. It can cleanse Ash arrows, it can cleanse, Leona ults, it can cleanse Morgana binds. So there's a lot of CC out there right now, and Mikhail's is really, really strong. And Soraka does scale very well over time too, very similar to Sona. I think if we can get it pulled up here. Oh my god, seriously? Ooh, okay, I better be careful here. Alright, so I still should be able to record. I'm not sure why it's showing. We had internet problems last night, and I thought we got it fixed. Jesus, it looks like it might be having problems again. But I'm going to go ahead and finish the video, so can I still get to this? Okay. So we may not be able to go back through those, but we'll just describe and go through the rest. I am recording. It records this live on my computer, so if the internet's down, that's annoying, but at least I can finish the video. God. Anyways, so let's just go through the rest of these really quick, and hopefully the apocalypse doesn't happen again to the internet. But anyway, so I think Soraka is really good at roaming, great with Mikhail's. Mikhail's is really strong in the meta right now. Okay, Lulu. Lulu does have a pretty high win rate overall right now, and she is picked and banned a lot. She does scale really well with her W. It ends up giving a lot of extra movement speed and attack speed to your ally, which is strong. Her shield, her E is on a really low cooldown. It's an 8-second cooldown for a level 1 shield, which is pretty strong. And it can double as both offense and defense. You can comfortably level up your E. You have your laning power, but then it transitions really well into your mid lane or your mid game power as well with the shield. So that is really solid. Your passive picks does a ton of damage around level 9 with standard items and runes. You're going to have about 80 damage on attack that you can give off to someone. So anyone else that has a ton of attack speed is going to be very strong. So this is really good on something like Blade of the Ruined King, Hurricane Ash. It's going to be good on just anyone that's going to be stacking a lot of attack speed. If you do happen to have a Vayne, a Kog'Maw, a Twitch, something like that that's going to get Blade of the Ruined King, then she's going to play very, very well with that. Her ult's also pretty nice. It's niche. It's only single target, but it is a huge burst of health, and it does get through Grievous Wounds. A lot of people are going to have Grievous Wounds out there because there is so much healing like we talked about earlier. So it is a really good way to bypass Grievous. It doesn't scale with plus healing and shielding, though, so that is a little awkward. It's not going to trigger Athenes, so if you ult somebody and you have those Athenes stacked up, it's not going to give the extra health off of that because it's an infusion of health. It's not a heal. So it doesn't work with plus healing and shielding, but gets around Grievous Wounds, so it's kind of a pro-con there. But overall, she's pretty solid. I just have her a little bit lower just because most of her stuff is 650 range. Both her W and her E are really short range, so that means that you're going to be stepping into engage range a little bit more of other champions. You might get some collateral splash damage. So like Rumble drops an ult, Kenan's ulting, something like that. You might just get hit. So you are just a little bit more vulnerable in team fights. And she is really squishy when she's running around too. She doesn't have a lot of stuff to protect herself. And she doesn't have a heal in the laning phase. So if you do take harassment from Sona, Soraka, Bard, whatever, it's going to stick. You can't really get through it. You can bypass that a little bit by taking biscuits, which I recommend, like biscuit boots on her. And you can go for a couple of other things to help you heal up early on. You can go for like maybe conditioning if you want to go Guardian, and then or Second Wind rather with Guardian. You know, that can help you through some of these harass lanes. But overall, she is going to be a little bit weak to harass, but she's the best probably single target buff champion in the support role, right? Once you get the Ardent Sensor plus multiple points in your W, you really hand out a ton of extra damage. You do even have the option of getting a cheeky Zeke's if you want to in there, which does give you the armor, does give you the CDR, and it gives you that extra on-hit damage that pairs really well with your W and with Ardent Sensor. So she does have a lot of options there. And you're not losing out on as much by not getting plus healing and shielding with that build because you don't scale super well with plus healing and shielding to begin with, because the ult doesn't scale with it. So I'm not saying you should do that all the time, but that is an option. Most of the time, you're probably going to want to do Athenes plus Shirelius. Okay. And Janna is the final tier 1 that I'll mention here. The big ticket with Janna is that she is very good against some of the other hard engage that's out there. Once again, it is kind of rare, you know, the Leonas, the Nautiluses, stuff like that. You're not seeing as much of that. But she also has a lot of movement speed, so kind of Bard-esque if you can get priority in the lane. And she can push the lane really well with her Tornado. You are vulnerable to all-ins if you do that, but if they aren't playing an all-in champ, if they do have a Lulu or something like that, then you can just like full charge your Tornado when the wave's coming up and just let your Tornado just run through and hit the wave, and it does pretty respectable damage if you line it up correctly. So she can hard push and then use her W to go roam around the map. Her damage is not brutal on the roams, obviously, but she is really fast, so she can react and get to situations quickly, and she's pretty safe, so you can get deep vision in the enemy jungle more comfortably than a lot of other supports, because if they try to engage on you, you're really fast, you have your tornado to help you disengage, you have your ult to help you disengage, so you have a lot of things going for you if you need to escape a hot situation like that. And she scales pretty well. She does buff up any sort of AD champ really well, so once you get Ardent Sensor plus your shield, the shield's going to give out around 50 extra AD in the mid game, and then you have Ardent Sensor, of course, is giving that buff. And because it's flat AD, it does work really well with some of these AD assassin type of champs. You can give that shield to a Zed or something like that, and he's going to hit like a truck or a Talon, or just any other burst AD type of champ. It's going to be good. Versus with Lulu, if you give Zed a lot of extra attack speed with your W, it's probably not going to matter that much, right? He's not attacking a lot. He's looking for the abilities that can help burst. So Janna can work with the attack speed people, but she can also work with the really heavy hitting people. So she's pretty solid with something like a Misfortune or a Jhin, because Jhin is going to get so much extra damage on his crit that giving that shield to somebody is going to just give a massive crit. And then someone like Misfortune, who's going to channel her ult, obviously that ult's not going to scale with attack speed, but it does scale with AD, and it does scale very well with AD. So being able to put a shield on a Misfortune while she's channeling her ult, then you can also peel people off of her so that she can ult and not get interrupted. She does have some really good lane partners down there. So I would think of her mostly as a counter to hard engaged champs, but she's perfectly line pickable. I think that she can be very strong right now. Her matchups against heavy poke like Sona or Lux can be a little problematic because her shield is on a very long cooldown early on, and she doesn't have any innate healing like Lulu, or in a similar vein to Lulu. But overall, she can still be pretty good. Okay, Rakan's the next one that I'll mention here. I do still think that Rakan can be pretty good. I think he's underutilized. I believe his biggest strengths are if the enemy has a lot of melee champs, particularly melee assassins, then he plays very, very well into that meta. Because if you ult and then shield onto someone and you have Guardian, it is going to protect them. It's going to help them out against that burst, but then you're pretty much guaranteed to hit that charm on somebody. Then you can do the W to knock up, hit him with a Q, and then shield back again and give him a heal. So if you combine his double shield plus his heal, he has pretty high burst damage mitigation, especially when you throw Guardian into the mix. So he's really, really good at dealing with that stuff. And the fact that he's very high mobility and he can itemize into armor as well, or some magic resist. You can take Merc boots or Ninja Tabby if you need to, and then often he gets Zeeks early on, which gives him a bit of survivability. And he's engaged, right? A lot of these other enchanters can't engage that well. So if you need peel, if you need someone who scales really well with plus healing and shielding, like Rakan does, and AP, by the way. I mean, his shield is like a 1.6 AP ratio, like when you do both shields. It's like a 280 base with a 1.6 AP ratio. So by comparison, Janna is like a 240 base with a 0.7 AP ratio. So his shield is better than almost any other shield out there, except for maybe a double tap Lux shield. Anyways, he's people forget about that he does have the big shield. His big problem is he can be very vulnerable to CC if you get chain CC'd, and his laning phase is not that great, right? Because like his Q doesn't really do that much unless you put a lot of points into it, which means you're sacrificing your mid game by not having W or E leveled up that much. So that can be a problem, and he just basically, it's really hard for him to get priority. He doesn't push very well. He can just get kind of bullied into the lane. So he can engage pretty well onto someone like an Ashe. But I mean, Ashe and Caitlyn are both kind of a tough cover. If Ashe manages to arrow him while he's, running at her, or if Caitlyn, plays around her traps, they can be very annoying to deal with. So I think that Rakan is still decent. He's better than people think he is. But he is going to have a bit of a hard time against a lot of the other champs out there. He also has a pretty bad matchup into Bard, because if you ever try to shield onto somebody and Bard Qs, there's a really high probability he's going to hit both of you, because you're pretty much lining up right on top of each other. And you can't really shield Bard's ult either. You're just going to get ulted yourself. So a lot of his strengths, being able to shield somebody and, peel off melee people, really get nullified by Bard pretty hard. So yeah, pretty bad matchup into Bard, and then not a phenomenal matchup into things like Soraka either. So He's okay. If they have a lot of assassins, so they have like double assassin on their team, they have like a Fizz middle and a Kha'Zix jungle, you know, he might be worth considering, but against other enchanters, it can be problematic. Okay, and then on him, you want to go Zeke's and the Shurelya's most of the time, but you can mix in stuff like Redemption or Athene's or, you know, stuff like that, Ardent Sensor. You do have a lot of options with Rakan. Okay, Blitzcrank, I think he's pretty good right now just because he's good against the enchanters, right? If you pull the Senna, the Soraka, or the Lulu out of position, you can blow them up. He does a lot of damage. He's very, very one-dimensional. You have to hit your shield. One problem is Edge of Night is kind of coming back into the meta a bit more. A lot of people are recognizing how powerful that is, even on 80 carries. So, you know, if they get Edge of Night, it's going to be really tough. Or like Banshee's Veil and things like that. It's going to be tough. But he does have quite a lot of dominance if you can get it. If the enemy team doesn't have a lot of tanks, then he's great. You know, if they do have a lot of tanks, then he's going to be a bit weaker. And tanks, like I said, aren't being picked as much as they should be, probably in the jungle and top. So that is nice, and there are not a lot of tanks being picked in the bot lane. So I do think he has a pretty decent shot right now, but he is very one-dimensional. There is some decent counterplay to him. So it's, you know, it just depends on how well you do with those hooks. Okay, Karma, she did get nerfed a few patches ago. I still think that she's pretty good in the meta overall. The Q can push really well still. You have a lot of harassment in the early game. You basically get an ult before anyone else does. You can push, harass them under tower, and then get away if you need to with your E and the movement speed increase. So I think that she's still pretty good. She has good team fight later on as well. You can speed your whole team in with Shurelya's plus your Mantra E. Just move in there really fast. Your W is a really good gank tool. Like, it's pretty much impossible for them to get away from it. If you just run up to them with your shield with your W and then stick to them and just flash after them, you're going to get that root for the 1.4 seconds. So very, very nice gank assist. So I think Karma can still be pretty decent, but those nerfs, I can't get to the stats because I'm afraid that I don't know what's going on with the internet right now. It still says it's connected, but as you saw, the little Xfinity thing popped up, so I'm going to have to call and talk to them for another million hours. But anyways, Nautilus, still going to be decent if you want the hard engage. He does get outscaled really hard by enchanters, so you have to make something happen early. You have to be proactive, constantly look for those hooks, look for that snowball. But if you do make that happen, then he can still be pretty strong. Zeke's is a good opener, adds a lot of extra damage to both you and your ally whenever you're engaging. If they do have a lot of damage on their team, then you can go something like Gargoyle Stoneplate. I still am partial in solo queue to like the Zeke's plus Knight's Vow just because it buffs up your allies a little bit more. But with his recent nerf to his shield, maybe it is better just to go for Gargoyle Stoneplate more often. Okay, and then last couple ones. Lux was up there quite a bit. She had 54.5% win rate on the last patch, so she was super strong. A lot of people are going for the Guardian Lux, so they're doing Guardian and then Shield Bash, and they're going for Athene's plus Ardent Sensor, so kind of the Enchanter style Lux. I tried her out. I really don't get it. I mean, she's okay, but she does push really well with her E. It is very difficult to engage on her because of your shield, because of your Guardian. You do have a nice engage if you hit it with your Q. It's a 2-second bind that can hit up to 2 people, so pretty good engage tool there. So she does have a lot going for her, I suppose, although those nerfs right there, have me a little bit worried on the 10-17, the W nerf, and the double W nerf, basically. So we'll see how she does. I think she's going to fall down a little bit, but she can be really strong if you're hitting, if you're doing 5v5 fights where you can really leverage the strength of that AoE shield, and if you're consistently hitting your Qs, I think she can be good. She doesn't roam super well in the mid game, kind of like some of the other champs. She does have a bind to help her get away. She can use her ult from really far range to finish people off in mid lane or in the jungle. So just have a little bit better roaming potential than something like a Senna or a Lulu, but maybe not as much as something like a Bard or a Soraka or even a Rakan or a Blitzcrank. So she's okay. She's okay right now. Really high win rate, but I'm just not sure about how these nerfs are going to affect her. And then Yumi, I kind of pushed down quite a bit. This is just not a meta for her right now. Yes, her numbers were nerfed a lot, and that does hurt her, but she just takes so long to come online. You know, her Q is... There's a lot of outplay potential with the Q. You know, people can hide around minions. Your ADC cannot walk close enough to hit them with the Q. So, you know, her lane harassment is pretty subpar. And also walking up really close with Yumi to try to land the auto attacks for the mana is going to be really difficult against things like Caitlyn, Ashe, and Jhin, who all, you know, can hard punish you for that, right? Especially Ashe, once she gets to level 6, you know, she can just arrow you and you're dead, right? Or Caitlyn, if she puts a trap down, it can make it very annoying to get back to your team. And you're going to be eating, you know, 1 or 2 auto attacks before you W back. And then Jhin, you know, if he autos and W's you before you're able to get back in, you're probably dead as well. So it's just really difficult. She much favors something like an Ezreal or a Kaiser meta. Some of these slower champs that are going to be getting tier where you can auto attack them, get your mana back, and just kind of scale with them. It's just not happening as much right now. So she just takes a little bit too long to come online. Although I think that she can still be good if you have a lot of the bruisers on your team, the Garen, the Dariuses, stuff like that. In the mid game, I think she can still be good. So you got to respect it. She can be strong. It sounds like she should be good because there's not as many like Leonas and Nautilus and that kind of hard engage right now. But, you know, some of these other champions can keep up pretty well in terms of scaling, and they just have a lot more power in the early game. So she can be really good, but I think there are a lot of situations where she's going to be subpar right now. And then Leona, kind of like Nautilus, really strong. Leona's big thing, why you would pick her over Nautilus, is she has a much lower cooldown on her ult. So her ult's only 90 seconds instead of, I think, 130 at level 1. So you have a lot more opportunities to make plays. And then it's a much longer range. I think it's like 11 or 1200 range on the ult. So that helps out a lot. Nautilus is, I think, like 800 or 900 on his ult. She does a lot more damage early on, and she's a lot more resilient early on in terms of that W, especially against little chip damage, like your Ares, your Scorches, auto attacks, minion damage. All that stuff is going to get reduced by quite a lot off of your W, which reduces by a flat amount all damage that you take from all sources early on. So why is she lower then? The main reason is she's just a lot riskier, right? She has to go all the way in 100% over to the other person. You know, if it's a bad engage, you're definitely going to die, versus Nautilus is going to meet him halfway. It's going to pull him halfway in. Nautilus can also use his hook to escape and get to towers and things like that. So basically, if you're doing really well, she has much better offense than Nautilus does, I think. But if you want to be a bit more cautious, I think Nautilus be better. And also, like, I think Nautilus has more CC in general just because his ultimate can hit multiple people in team fights. His auto attack also provides a route that can hit multiple people in team fights. His E does quite a bit of AoE damage and can slow multiple people. So I think he has a decent amount going for him. They're both very close, though. It's just Nautilus is a little bit more balanced in my mind in terms of like offense and defense, and then Leona is just much, much more on offense. Okay. Morgana's really mostly a counter pick, and she's very good against the champions that she's good against, right? So anyone that relies very heavily on the hard engage, the Leona, Nautilus, Thresh, all that stuff, even Bard to some extent, she can be pretty good, and obviously going to be very good against Ashe too, to block the Ashe arrow with the Black Shield. Morgana's big problem is that her cooldowns are really long. They did reduce the cooldown on her Q, but it's a very slow skill shot. It does have a big hitbox, but it's a very slow skill shot. It's easy to dodge. Your Black Shield doesn't prevent any physical damage. So if they have a lot of physical damage on their team, Talon, Zed, stuff like that, it's not really going to help them out that much. And then your W is basically worthless. Like it helps you push early on. It doesn't do anything later. And your ult is very situational at best. So she is pretty good, but a lot of it just depends on how much value are you getting out of that Black Shield. You know, is it really worth it to sacrifice so much else that you could have from a support in order to make someone immune to CC for a short period of time? In a lot of circumstances, yeah, it might be, right? If you have a really fed Katarina or you have a really fed Vayne or something, and they are kind of a low damage team with a lot of CC, you know, maybe they've got Nautilus on their team, like Nautilus, Ashe, and then the jungle's like Sejuani or something like that. It's like, yeah, that Black Shield might be pretty good, but I just think of her much more as a situational counter pick rather than an outright strong champ. In the final couple here, we have Senna. Senna's still pretty good. She does match the push and poke style really well. If you pair her with a Caitlyn or an Ashe, you can put them in a tower pretty comfortably. I just think that her scaling is kind of suspect. If you do get a lot of souls, you can do pretty well later on. She does have some engage with her W. She has a skill shot ult with her R. So she's got a lot of stuff going for her. I really like the Glacial Augment build a lot better because then you get a built-in slow in your kit. The boots are really nice on her. The biscuits are nice. So she has a lot of stuff going for her. I don't like the grasp build as much. I know some people, go for the grasp on her. My main critique of that build is you really have to be super aggressive early on and really leverage those grasp stacks because you're going to have to spend, the 3,200 gold to get the Ice Hammer. I'm forgetting what it's called. Frozen Mallet. And that's so much money. I mean, 3,200 gold could go to so many more items, and you're just paying so much for that slow. Yes, you do get a lot of extra health, but you just don't have resistances to go with it. You're still going to melt to a lot of assassins or other sustained damage champs. So it's like, yes, in some circumstances, you might survive with that extra health. It's better than not having health for sure. But her kit is just not designed very well for that. You do have a heal, you do have a shield, so that does help you out some. You're just not going to be getting a lot of other resistances with that build, and she already is really squishy. So I think that build is very good early. You do get the extra damage, the extra healing from Grasp. It does help you out a little bit in the mid game by having a lot of extra personal survivability, but you're giving up a lot of utility. If you go for Glacial Augment, then you're free to go for stuff like Umbral Glaive early on, which gives you some supreme vision control. That's very nice. Just allowing you to clear out those wards, maybe make some good picks, free up some pathing for your jungler. I think that's really strong. And then being able to get something like Edge of Night, having the option to get an Edge of Night helps you out with some of her hardest matchups, right? So like the Blitzcrank, the Nautilus, the Leonas are tough matchups for Senna, but if you have Edge of Night, that helps out a ton. And then you also have other options. If you want to double down on the damage, you can go Dustblade, you can go Ghostblade if you need to be able to kite and reposition better. So I think the Lethality suite gives you a lot more options to adapt to different game states and sort of adapt your playstyle to match what your team needs. Just has a lot more utility to it. So I like that a lot more. And it just comes online faster. If you get an Umbral Glaive, that's 2,400 gold versus the 3,200 gold for the Ice Hammer. So Iceborne Gauntlet, or not Iceborne Gauntlet, Frozen Mallet. So, anyways, I think she's okay. There can be arguments. I know that Duck is a big fan of Grasp, and you're not alone. There's a lot of other people out there that like Grasp, Senna as well. It can work. I think it's just a harder playstyle to pull off, especially at lower elos, and it's a lot more dependent on snowballing early, which can work, but I personally just prefer the Glacial Augment version for the reasons that I described. And a lot of people are trending that way. Like, most people are doing Glacial. Last time I looked, it was maybe like 60-40 or 70-30 of high-end players preferring Glacial over Grass, but I haven't really looked, and right now I can't go look, so. Anyways, final champ here. Well, I'll talk about my honorable mention Ziggs really quick after this, but the last champ I'll mention is Nami. She's okay, but she has really long cooldowns. Her healing is somewhat limited, and she does get outscaled by other enchanters. But if you do land the bubble, if you do, hit your wave on people in team fights, she can, make a big splash there, just for a terrible pun. But yeah, I think that she can be strong. She doesn't push waves very well, but she does harass really well with her W in the laning phase. A big nerf to her a few patches ago is that movement speed. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but going from the 60 speed down to 45 on your E or on your passive, especially when you can proc that on multiple people, and you would give out double speed, whenever your wave went through your allies. So if you threw the wave through your allies and then hit the enemy, they'd be getting 120 speed. Now they're only getting 90. So there's a lot of stuff with that speed that really did add up quite a bit. And that's reflected in her win rate, which is still pretty good. I think it's like 51-52%. So she's okay. You could definitely make her work, but she does, kind of like Sona, it's impossible to dodge her harass. You just walk up and spam W on people. And if they don't have a Leona or a Nautilus or something, that can work as well, but anyway, she's okay. And then there's a few honorable mentions. One that I'll mention is Ziggs, that I did play on stream a bit last week. I think that he does have quite a bit of potential, oddly enough, in the support role, just because he does push really well with his Q. great low-cost harassment. Your minefield does make it kind of tricky to engage on you, and it is an excellent harassment tool under the tower as well. And then one of the marquee things that sets Ziggs apart from other stuff that pushes well that can harass is his ability to demolish those towers. He did get a buff on the last patch to where his passive does a lot more damage to towers when you auto attack them when it's lit up, and of course you have your W to destroy towers, so it does allow you to snowball a lot faster when you have an Ashe or a Caitlyn on your team. You get that tower down to about 2 plates and you're going to be able to demolish it with your W. It's really like a plate and a half you can demolish, but a very good combination. Or if your team gets Rift Herald or something and you go to where the Rift is, you know, as soon as Rift charges, you just drop your charge, your satchel charge with your W, and it's just like instant destruction. So he does, you know, slam those things really hard, and he puts out pretty good damage. Like I was doing like a Glacial Augment build with him with Twin Shadows and GLP, which is unusual, but I think for support, if you're wanting a cheap item that works, I think that can work. So he's not going to put up as much damage as something like a Brand or a Zyra, but he does bring the utility of that tower shred, of multiple slows. The W can be a pretty surprisingly good displacement if you use it correctly. They did change the knockback distance too, so it knocks back enemies even further than it used to. So he's got some decent tools in his kit. Now, yes, he can be bullied out by other champs. You do not want to pick him if you're going to have a losing lane. So if you have a Vayne or an Ezreal or something on your team, or a Kaiser, do not pick Ziggs. You need to have the Caitlyn or the Ashe, just something that's going to hard push, but it can work out. Are there better options? Maybe, but it can help you snowball really well. So if you want to check that out, I did play that a decent chunk last week, and I do have the streams labeled for the ones that are up there. It'll say Ziggs in the title if I was playing Ziggs. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe. I will have an all champ video. I'll try to get that out for you either tomorrow or maybe Friday, and we should have a lot more upcoming content. Hopefully if I can keep this internet going, then I will be able to stream over the next few days, but we'll get that up as soon as we can. Yeah, and that's going to be it. Have a good day. See you next time.